The next words caught him completely off guard. "What do you need it for?" the boy asked, his tone calm and serious, but without any hint of judgment. Leonard swallowed hard. He hadn't expected an actual conversation. "A cup of coffee would be nice," he admitted, his voice raspy from the cold. "Maybe a sandwich, if I'm lucky." He felt uneasy being questioned, yet something about the boy's expression showed genuine curiosity, not condescension. The teenager stepped closer, phone now forgotten. Leonard could sense the eyes of passers-by on them, maybe whispering, maybe judging the unusual sight of a teenage Trump stopping for a homeless man. He wanted to disappear under their stares, but the boy's unwavering attention held him in place. "What's your name?" the boy asked. "Leonard," he replied quietly. At that, the teenager gave a faint nod. "I'm Barron," he said simply. No arrogance, just sincerity. The city's hum carried on, but something in the air had shifted. The space between them felt charged, as if this seemingly ordinary moment was about to become something more. Leonard shifted, unsure how to respond. But then Barron crouched down, eye level with him. The move startled Leonard. No one had ever done that before. He hesitated. He rarely shared his story, but something in Barron's demeanor made honesty feel natural. "Almost a year," Leonard finally admitted. "Lost my job when the plant shut down. Then my health took a turn. I couldn't keep up with rent, and," he swallowed hard, "it's been a mess ever since." Barron listened intently, his gaze steady, focused, not pitying. Leonard could feel the crowd's attention intensify. More people had stopped, watching, whispering. The teenage son of a billionaire, kneeling beside a homeless man. It was a sight no one expected. "My family." Leonard shook his head. "None left. My parents passed years ago. My brother." He exhaled a hollow laugh. "We haven't talked in ages. Hard to lose more when you've already lost it all." Barron seemed to take a moment, letting every word sink in. Then, without warning, he reached into his pocket. Leonard's heart pounded. He had only asked for $1, but Barron pulled out a crisp $100 bill. Leonard blinked, stunned. Barron held out the bill. "This should cover more than just coffee, right?" Leonard gaped. Are you serious?" His voice cracked. "Why would you do that?" Barron merely shrugged. "Because I can." Before Leonard could even process the generosity, Barron leaned in slightly. "But listen," he said softly, "this isn't just about the money. I need you to promise me something." Leonard's throat felt dry. "And what's that?" "If I help you today," Barron explained, "you help yourself tomorrow." Leonard felt his eyes well up. No one had ever just handed him such a large sum, let alone asked him to commit to changing his life. After a moment, he nodded, words escaping him. "Good," Barron said, standing. Around them, a small crowd had gathered. Leonard noticed people filming with their phones, which made his face flush with embarrassment. But Barron, he remained composed. He reached into his pocket again, this time pulling out a pen and notepad, quickly jotting something down. "Go here tomorrow morning," Barron instructed, handing Leonard the note. "They'll help you. Tell them Barron sent you." Leonard's hands trembled slightly as he unfolded the paper. It was an address, a local shelter. The resource center had a reputation. It was said to provide strong support for those in desperate situations. "I'll make sure they're expecting you," Barron assured, his voice steady. Leonard clutched the note and the $100 bill as if they were sacred. This wasn't just kindness. It felt like hope, a real, tangible path forward. Deep down, He knew this moment was a turning point. His eyes stayed locked on the bill and the note, his mind racing in disbelief. Barron lingered a moment longer, watching Leonard's reaction with an odd intensity, as if he was waiting for something more than just gratitude. Leonard's voice trembled when he finally managed to speak. "Why do you care? You don't even know me." A faint smile tugged at Barron's lips. "Everyone has a story. Yours just hasn't been heard. If I can help, I should." Leonard wasn't used to this kind of sincerity, especially from a stranger. Suspicion crept in. People didn't usually stop like this unless they wanted something. But then, Barron crouched down again, locking eyes with him. "I don't expect anything," he said firmly, "but small actions can lead to bigger change." He gestured to the address in Leonard's hand. "They've got job training, counseling, everything you need. All I'm asking," Barron continued, "is that you show up." Leonard shuddered, years of struggle pressing down on him. "What if I screw up?" he whispered. "Everyone does," Barron replied softly. "Quitting, that's the only real failure." Leonard's chest tightened. The city noise around them seemed to fade. "Forget them," Barron murmured, nodding toward the onlookers. "Right now, it's just us." Leonard exhaled, emotions tangling inside him. Gratitude, shame, hope. No one had ever taken the time to see him as anything more than a burden, or an eyesore. "All right," he said, voice growing steadier. "I'll go. I promise." Relief flickered in Barron's eyes. He stood, dusted off his knees, and glanced at the crowd. Then, turning back to Leonard, he spoke loud enough for them to hear. With that, Barron turned and walked away. The crowd slowly parted, watching him disappear into the city's rhythm. Leonard sat frozen for a moment, something warm flickering inside him, a feeling he hadn't known in ages. Was this hope? Around him, others clutched grocery bags, their faces uncertain, mirroring how he felt. He tightened his grip on the note in his pocket, recalling the promise he'd made. The crisp $100 bill was safely tucked in his jacket, a physical reminder that something extraordinary had just happened. Steeling himself, he stepped inside the building. The warmth inside was a stark contrast to the biting cold outside. At the front desk sat a middle-aged woman with kind eyes. She looked up, smiling. "Can I help you?" Leonard hesitated before sliding the crumpled note forward. "Barron sent me," he said, awkwardly. Her eyes flicked over the paper. Almost instantly, her smile widened. "You must be Leonard," she said warmly. "We've been expecting you. Come on, let's get you set up." A nervous knot tightened in Leonard's stomach, but he followed her. Soon, a caseworker sat with him, listening, really listening, without a trace of judgment. Together they laid out a plan: a safe place to sleep at the shelter, a medical checkup for his health concerns, and a chance to enroll in a job training program. It was overwhelming, but in a good way. For the first time in a long time, Leonard felt like his broken life could be pieced back together. Later that night, as he sat on the edge of a cot in the shelter's dormitory, the last 24 hours replayed in his mind. Barron's words echoed, the vow Leonard had made weighed on him. "I help you today. You help yourself tomorrow." It wouldn't be easy, but for the first time, it felt possible. While Leonard focused on rebuilding his life, something beyond the shelter walls was unfolding, something he knew nothing about. Someone had filmed his encounter with Barron the day before. The clip had spread like wildfire on social media. Suddenly, the image of a teenage Trump kneeling beside a homeless man in the freezing cold had become front-page news. In the footage, Barron could be seen handing over money, speaking softly. Though the exact words were unclear, the internet erupted in debate, Was this just a PR stunt? Or was it a genuine act of kindness from someone with privilege? Regardless of opinions, the video struck a chord. People were moved by the rawness of the moment. One man's despair, a young person's compassion, and the idea that a single act of kindness could set off something bigger. Online, the clip spread like wildfire, racking up millions of views overnight. "They're still human," one comment read, referencing the struggles of the homeless. Others chimed in, "Finally, some good news, and maybe we should do more than just watch." But Leonard had no idea about the storm unfolding on social media. He was too focused on taking small steps forward, scheduling doctor's appointments, filling out job applications with the staff's help, and, for the first time in a long while, letting himself believe that change was possible. Within days, he started noticing a shift, both in himself and the world around him. The shelter staff treated him with warmth and respect, never reducing him to just another statistic. They saw him as a man, a person deserving of support. Fellow residents at the shelter encouraged him. Some even asked about his story. He kept his answers simple, unaware that soon his past would be broadcast to an audience far greater than he ever imagined. A quiet confidence started growing within him. Each morning he woke up with purpose, attending group workshops, sticking to the plan he had worked out with his caseworker. Hope Outreach wasn't just a safety net, it was a springboard, pushing him toward independence. Yet, outside the shelter, Leonard's story was anything but quiet. News outlets picked up the viral video, analyzing it from every angle. Pundits debated Barron's motives. Social media exploded with discussions about real altruism. What did it truly mean to help someone? Messages poured in from across the world. One small act of humanity had reignited hope in so many. Leonard only learned of the commotion when a shelter staff member showed him a news segment. Seeing himself on screen, hollow eyes, defeated posture, made him cringe. He barely recognized that man. Embarrassment swirled with gratitude, and something else. An unfamiliar feeling. Maybe it was the realization that his years of hardship were no longer hidden. Meanwhile, in the shadows, Barron remained silent. He avoided all public commentary, turned down interviews, and stayed far away from the media frenzy. He had never intended to be a headline. His goal had been simple, to help one person, not to seek attention. Out of the spotlight, he quietly funneled donations to Hope Outreach, ensuring their programs could expand. But his silence only added fuel to the speculation. Some praised him for his humility, while others suspected the whole thing had been orchestrated. Regardless of the debates, the video had ignited something bigger, a movement. Inspired by the story, people started performing their own small acts of kindness, sharing them online under hashtags like #KindnessChallenge and #PayItForward. Across the country, shelters saw a surge in donations. Volunteers poured in, driven by the realization that even the smallest gestures could change, maybe even save, a life. And soon, Leonard would feel the impact of this movement in a deeply personal way. One evening, as he sat in the shelter's common area, a man hesitantly approached. There was something vaguely familiar about him. Leonard squinted, searching the stranger's face. Then, recognition hit him like a shockwave. "Paul," he whispered, heart racing. It was his younger brother, the one he hadn't seen in over a decade. They stood there, frozen, emotions crashing between them. Regret, relief, disbelief. "I saw the video," Paul admitted, voice unsteady as he took a seat. I didn't realize things had gotten this bad for you. I'm sorry I wasn't there." Leonard's throat tightened. Tears threatened to spill, but he held them back, shaking his head. "It's not your fault. I pushed everyone away," he murmured. "I guess I just disappeared. Paul placed a firm hand on Leonard's shoulder. I should have tried harder. And so, in a simple common room with worn-out chairs and harsh fluorescent lighting, two brothers began to mend what had been broken. It was bittersweet, a reminder of lost time, but also a chance to rebuild. Leonard realized that while his journey toward a better future was only just beginning, this reunion was an unexpected gift. In the weeks that followed, his days slowly found stability. He met with doctors, explored job opportunities, and worked with counselors to process the emotional toll of homelessness. Day by day, a quiet sense of hope started to take root. At Hope Outreach, the staff treated Leonard like someone worth believing in. Their unwavering support chipped away at the self-doubt that still clung to him. Every workshop, every conversation, it felt like another brick being placed in the foundation of his new life. Other shelter residents noticed his determination. Some even asked him for advice, while others simply told him that his story had inspired them. Outside, headlines continued circulating. Leonard's face would flash on TV screens, featured in news segments recapping his encounter with Barron. But the commentary, it didn't always matter to him. He was focused on something more important, keeping his promise, helping himself, step by step. Yet, the support he had received had done more than just change his own life. It had ignited something bigger. Donations flooded into Hope Outreach, allowing them to provide more beds, better resources, and assistance for people who had previously been turned away. Staff members shared the exciting news. Because of this wave of kindness, even more lives could be helped. For Leonard, the realization was humbling. The idea that one small encounter on the street could unlock new opportunities, not just for him, but for so many others, was almost overwhelming. Of course, challenges still remained. He knew that one stroke of luck wouldn't erase all the hardships he had endured. But each morning, he reminded himself of how far he had come. Just weeks ago, he had been sitting in the cold, sign in hand, with no hope for tomorrow. Now, he had a plan, even if it still felt fragile. More than once, Leonard considered reaching out to Barron, but there was no direct way to contact him. In a way, though, he respected that. Barron hadn't sought attention or wanted to be hailed as a hero. That quiet sincerity, it had changed everything for Leonard. Outside the shelter walls, the world debated the motives of a well-known teenager. Inside, Leonard focused on his own journey. He applied for entry-level jobs through the shelter's employment services. He reconnected with Paul, realizing they had far more in common than he'd thought. Late at night, they would sit and talk about their childhood, the mistakes they'd both made, and the possibility of rebuilding their bond moving forward. Slowly, Leonard began to see his hardships in a new light, not as a permanent scar, but as a story of resilience. He had fallen hard, but maybe, just maybe, that fall had a purpose. If it helped him rebuild with more understanding, if it drove him to make sure others didn't slip through the cracks, then perhaps everything he had endured had meaning. The media frenzy surrounding the viral video eventually faded. But its impact, it remained. Local non-profits reported a surge in volunteers and an increase in donations. Strangers formed online communities, dedicated to replicating what had seemed like a small but deeply profound gesture. People scoured their cities, looking for ways to help, because they now understood that someone like Leonard wasn't just a statistic. Some critics dismissed it as a fleeting trend, one that would fade once the news cycle moved on. Others, however, saw it as something else, a spark, a moment that could grow into something lasting. And Leonard, he chose to believe, because he had already seen what one act of kindness, one moment of being truly seen, could do. Not every journey would turn out exactly like his. He knew that. But if even one more life was changed, if just one more person was saved, then this movement, this shift, was worth everything, because every homeless person had a name, a past, and a story worth hearing. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. A few months later, Leonard had finally secured a small apartment through a housing assistance program. He wasn't wealthy, not yet fully stable, but having his own space, no matter how modest, felt monumental. When the time came to part ways with the shelter, it wasn't easy. Tearful hugs, heartfelt thanks. The staff had been his lifeline, guiding him when he had nothing left. But he made them a promise. He'd be back. Not as a resident, but as a volunteer. He wanted to pay forward the kindness that had saved him. One evening, sitting in his barely furnished apartment, just a bed, a table, and a second-hand couch, Leonard picked up an old, battered notebook. He began jotting down everything that had led him here. At the top of the page, he wrote, "Because someone believed in me." He thought of his brother, the staff at Hope Outreach, and of Barron, the teenager whose name had meant nothing to him at first, yet who had, in so many ways, changed his life forever. Leonard closed the notebook, his mind drifting back to that first encounter. A city street corner, the bitter wind cutting through him, the deep, humiliating vulnerability of asking strangers for a $1. He could still feel the crisp $100 bill in his hand, still picture the intensity in Barron's eyes as he made Leonard promise to help himself. And Leonard had kept that promise. In doing so, he had rediscovered hope, family, and purpose. As he sat there reflecting, he realized something. This wasn't just about him. It wasn't just about Barron either. The chain of events that had unfolded was far bigger than them both. It was about people witnessing kindness and feeling inspired to do the same. It was about understanding that everyone, no matter their circumstances, deserves a second chance. No matter how lost someone seems, they could be just one gesture away from a fresh start. Perhaps the biggest lesson? Life can shift on the smallest hinges. In that one random moment, Barron's simple choice, to meet Leonard's eyes, to offer help, had changed both of them. And if a single conversation on a freezing Cleveland street could spark a nationwide movement of giving, who's to say how many other lives could be transformed by a moment of compassion? Leonard wasn't naive about what lay ahead. Finding steady work, tackling his lingering health struggles, mending broken relationships. None of it would happen overnight. But that memory, the moment everything changed, stayed with him like a guiding light, reminding him that good still existed in the world and inside himself. Standing by his apartment window, he stared down at the bustling streets, city lights flickering against the night sky. Tomorrow was a new day. He'd apply for a permanent job placement, continue reconnecting with Paul, and stop by Hope Outreach to volunteer. Not long ago, he had sat on the sidewalk in rags, hopeless, forgotten. Now, every choice he made radiated with hope, because in the end, one small act of kindness had ignited something far greater. It proved that no one is ever too far gone, that even in the darkest alleyways of despair, a single outstretched hand could illuminate a path to renewal. For Leonard, that hand had belonged to a teenager, a stranger who had asked for nothing in return, except for Leonard to believe in himself. And in choosing to do so, Leonard realized his story wasn't ending. It was only just beginning.